This is the Lakin Chronicles Road to Recovery podcast with addiction recovery specialist Dr. Greg Lakin. Real people, real stories, real addiction, and real recovery journeys. The road to recovery starts now.
Thank you, Phil. I have a special guest here today. We've known each other for a long time. Mm-hmm. Tina Louise, I call her, because that truly is your middle name, right?
You finally got it.
I got it right. Yeah, but you look more like Mary Ann for anybody that
this is true.
Knows Gilligan's Island. But yes, so we go back a ways because you've been in the medical field for a long time.
Yes.
And many, many years, and then you have had to battle addiction in your family, and so I ended up having to go to a funeral a few months ago.
Yep.
It breaks my heart, but you've got a story to tell that I think will help others, and I really appreciate you coming on because people need to hear the good, the bad, the lessons learned, and It's very powerful. So just start from the beginning, if you would.
Well, so the addiction that we battled in our family wasn't mine. It was my son. His name is Kyle. And let's see. I want to say the first time that we were brought aware of the addiction was right after he had graduated from high school. So he was about 19 at the time. And this is the thing about life with an addict. I mean, this is my perspective only. You don't always get the whole truth. I mean, a lot of times it's what they want you to hear or half truths. So what I'm reporting here with this story is what we know. Because I think that addicts a lot of times live with a lot of secrets. And so with Kyle, he reported that he started using opiates after he had an injury. He had put his hand through a window and had tore up some ligaments in his arm. And the hand surgeon that we took him to put him on Lortabs. He was diagnosed with ADD as a child. We did not treat him with Adderall at the time. That was the only treatment.
Right.
In the early 90s. So we just, we treated it with lots of routine and all the other alternative methods of treating ADD. Well, Kyle had said that when he was taking the opiates, he realized that it affected his ADD. Like it helped him focus. Yeah. And it was on accident that he discovered that this drug helped him with other things that he battled with. And going on later in life, we recognized other things in his personality that he struggled with as far as, his coping mechanisms weren't the best. And so the opiates, I think, were just his way of self-medicating himself. So when he came to us at 19, he had, I can't honestly remember because this is so long ago. I mean, we're talking about a decade ago almost. If his friend had already died from an addiction. And I think maybe he came to us after that and said, Mom, I'm doing these same drugs. He had a friend named Phil that was taking opiates and Adderall. They were mixing them at that point in time. And he had a cardiac arrest while he was swimming in a lake at night. Wow. And so another 19-year-old had died, Kyle's best friend. So it rocked his world. I mean, to the point where Kyle had a 4.0. He was Phi Theta Kappa at Butler, and he had gotten a full ride scholarship to WSU, to their business program. Very brilliant kid. Yes. So he threw it all away. He decided he just couldn't do it. And of course he had to come up with a reason why, and that's when the addiction came to light. So after some talking and trying to figure out what we were going to do, giving him some choices, because he still lived at home at this time, and he had siblings, and so we couldn't have an addiction in the house.
Right, absolutely. Younger sister?
Yes, actually he has several younger siblings. Kyle's dad and I are divorced, and we both remarried. And so he has 2 younger siblings with his dad's side of the family. He remarried and they had 2 children. And then Kyle had 3 sisters on my side. So he had 5 younger siblings. So what happened was, at the time, it just came out where he'd actually tried to kick this himself at one point in time. I was telling the story earlier today that he had confessed to me that this flu that came out of the blue,
right,
where he was in bed for 5-6 days straight, was him coming off the opiates cold turkey. Mm-hmm. He was an athlete in high school, captain of his wrestling team.
Right.
You know, he wasn't going to let this beat him. He was very competitive. So his first time trying to get clean, he did it by himself. Nobody knew, with no help. He just went cold turkey. But the withdrawal, it's so... it's painful.
It's severe, yes.
Yeah, so, and he couldn't tell us because we didn't even know about the addiction at the time. So we just thought he had the flu, and, he stayed home for a week straight and then eventually came out of it. But this time when everything came out, he had decided, he was just shutting down. I mean, he had also obviously relapsed and was taking drugs again, and threw away this full ride scholarship to WSU. His best friend had just died. He was just a hot mess.
Yeah.
Hot mess.
All these things, it's a common theme where especially males have an element of anxiety or ADD, and all they know is that when they take a Lortab, Percocet, something like that, it kind of calms their mind and they feel more normal. Mm-hmm. They don't know in the long run that it's going to exacerbate everything. Right. And then guys are terrible, especially young guys, because they will not ask for help. They will not. Yeah. They're going to macho through it no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's what was happening, is he was experiencing that roller coaster that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And also, in addition to that, I think he was noticing that his tolerance level was going up and up and up. Yeah. And, we had always asked these, as a parent, you're like, how comes you work and you have no money ever? Because he was spending it on his drugs.
Working all the time.
Yeah. Because that was one of the conditions, we were like, if you're not going to go to college, then you need to work. Right. And he just couldn't. He was so broken down, and at the point where even what he was making at his part-time job that he was doing on top of school, it was just not enough. Yeah. So, I think we did try, he had done the cold turkey thing again. Mm-hmm. I skipped a little part. He refused to go to rehab. Mm-hmm. We couldn't get him to go.
Well, I remember you coming to me and bringing him to me, but he was an adult still.
Yep.
And headstrong, and he didn't see the need yet.
Yeah. He didn't see the he didn't. And so we, this is one of the hardest parts as a parent. We actually had to kick him out of the house.
Right.
Because he continued to use. He was drinking alcohol on top of it. Mm-hmm. We had young girls, his siblings were at home, and we just couldn't have it. And so Shane and I both made the decision together that
Shane's a police officer.
No, that's my husband.
Oh, got it.
Mike.
Okay.
Shane is his dad. Yeah. Shane was a recovering addict himself. Okay. And so you went to the funeral, so I'm sure you heard the story.
Yes.
But we had come together and we had decided, because he was newly recovered at that point. Mm-hmm. Shane was, and we both decided that we just couldn't. We were going to have to tough love this. Yes. And it's so heartbreaking as a mom. I don't know how dads do, but as a mom, to just kick your kid out. Yeah. No job. He had no job at the time. Shane took his car. Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking, okay, what is he going to do?
You tried everything else.
How's he going to eat, Yeah. But we did it, and somehow he figured out a couch to sleep on. And he, his grandma and I have a confession to make. We did sneak him food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you still.
Okay, I'm going to stick to the pact.
Yeah.
But nobody said I couldn't feed my son. So, I I don't feel like that was enabling. I had to feed him. I was his mom. Right. So, anyways, it was just a cycle. You know, he would recover and be in recovery and do great. Yeah. And when he was without drugs in his system, he was amazing person. Even when he was an addict, he was an amazing person. But just you would get that old Kyle back. And so it got to the point where Shane and I could tell, and my husband Mike, we could tell when he was sober and when he wasn't. Because we could see the old glimpses of him back. Yeah. It's funny how you don't really... it's funny how when he did come to us and say, I have an addiction, we were all kind of surprised. Yeah. But after a while, you get to where you see the signs, you know, when you know they're there, you start seeing them. So...
Yeah, with all that hindsight, all of a sudden
that didn't make sense. They're starting to make sense. Right. And so Kyle was doing great. He had actually... he was dating this girl several years. They had gotten engaged and were living together. Yes. He had a job. You know, he had the same job for like 6 years. I mean, so he seemed to be doing well. Right. But what we found out was that he's just got better at hiding his addiction. Or he was doing different drugs. So if it wasn't, you know, the opiate, because he could say, I'm not taking any opiates right now, but he was taking Xanax, or he was taking, you know, or he was drinking alcohol excessively, or, I mean, there was always something. Yeah. So,
something to calm the mind, something to calm the pain. And, you know, that's, I mean, if you got anxiety, ADD, or whatever, I think maybe you inherit the disorder, but you're going to use calming drugs, whatever it is, alcohol, benzos, opioids, to just calm that overactive mind that just starts to wear you down.
Yeah, and I don't even know, because I'm not an addict, I don't know what makes them decide to go and start using again after you're in a place of recovery. I don't get that, but I know it happens a lot. So I think with Kyle... he had tons of resources. It wasn't like he had money, not just his. We supported him in any type of recovery step he was making, whether it be exercising or doing yoga or reading about recovery, or, I mean, we were so supportive. He had people who cared about him and loved him and spent time with him, and we took, you know, a lot of ownership in helping him with this. Even though he was an adult, we still felt like his success would be, you know, more, it would come faster and stay if he had our support. So he had tons of resources. And
tons of love. I mean, you did everything right and everything within your powers. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so... but there's still, it still haunted him. It still was this thing that he just couldn't kick. And it got to the point where his fiance Jamie, she had enough. He had he even like spent time with you guys here. I think this last time before he ended up going into an inpatient rehab, he was on Suboxone. Right. So he did finally try something. Right. So it wasn't like he wasn't trying new things or different things. And this last time, you know, just within the year that he passed, he had called me up in crisis. I was at work, and he was just like, Mom, he's like, I'm not using opiates, but I am taking this. I'm drinking excessively. And he was like, I've never tried inpatient rehab and I want to do it.
Yes.
And this was at the end of February last year. So it's a little bit over a year ago. And I was like, thank God. I mean... I didn't know that he was using Xanax. I don't think any of us knew. Well, maybe Jamie had an idea because she was around him all the time. Some of his old habits started resurfacing, like never having any money. Right. Even though you make good money, never having any money.
Yep.
And with Kyle, he worked in the restaurant business, so he was cash based. Mm-hmm. So it's really easy.
Oh,
when you work in a cash based industry.
Exactly. No, it's common, and especially restaurants that are busy, when you got to stay on the move, and the faster pace it is, the more money you make, and so. And
he did that, and he loved it. I mean, he thrived in that environment, and so with him, I think that he was just tired, I think, of being a slave to it. Mm-hmm. I could hear the desperation in his voice, and so we, that day, the magic happened. We made it happen. I don't know how. We ended up taking him over to a local inpatient rehab and dropped him off. And even with insurance, because he had his own medical insurance, he was only able to stay for 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And that's really not long enough. If there's an underlying mood disorder, I mean, you have to stay clean and dry long enough that you can actually properly diagnose it and even treat it, and 2 weeks isn't going to do it.
Nope. Yeah. So he came out of rehab, and this was at the end of March last year, and I thought he was doing well, I thought. But Kyle was really good about hiding that internal struggle, and so he was doing intensive outpatient therapy. He was going to AA meetings. He was just totally submersing himself in whatever he needed to do to be recovered. Anything that made him nervous or stressed out, he was trying to avoid it like the plague. Yes. He was even eating well, like clean. He was he really tried. And so we did that for several months, and then I don't even remember what month it was. It was in the fall, I think. Jamie and his fiance had texted me, and she was like, something's going on again, because he's lying about, things.
Yes.
Money's disappearing.
Yes.
So, and I don't know if other addicts are like this, because he's really the only one I've ever lived with, but they get so good at lying.
It's just second nature.
And manipulating.
Yeah, they'll do whatever they have to do.
And so his stories were always so believable, and he had a backstory, and there were so many details, and on top of it, he was extremely charming. Oh, yeah. And so I always said he would be a perfect addict, because he was just, he knew how to work the system. Oh, yeah. Brilliant too, and that's the thing. He was smart, as on top of it.
Right.
And so.
And he probably had, young males get a tolerance so quickly, but they have to take so much just to feel normal. Yeah. We're talking $200 or $300 worth a day. Yeah. And so, but like you said, he thought probably that he had this all figured out. Yeah. At least day to day he did.
Yeah. Yeah, day to day. So, she finally, they broke up. He moved in with his dad, which I thought was a great idea, because his dad has done this recovery thing successfully. Yes. He's been sober for many years. And, but it got to the point where several months went by, and he wasn't doing the things that he and Shane had agreed upon that he would do. He started drinking again, and he started... Yeah. Staying out till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and not checking in. And it was just, it was like, and money was disappearing, like he would come home and say he had a slow night too often, the money, it wasn't making sense. And so Shane had finally said, dude, we're going to have some tough love here. I mean, so Shane had told him he was going to have to leave, and he found a place, which I think Shane had kind of sort of knew or his mom had known the person that he was moving in with. So it seemed like a decent environment for him to be in. And then 2 weeks later, he passed away from an overdose. So we just, it was like, just like that.
Yeah, all it takes is once. I'm sure.
And the thing that gets me, I think, the most is, and Shane and I have talked about this, Kyle, in his various stages of recovery, would be very open about his usage, educating us about the drugs, how much he took, where to get it. I mean, we know, because we would ask him questions because we want to be in his world. You know, we wanted to be submersed and try to understand and empathize with him. And I think, Kyle had actually done, he would do pharmaceutical research on these drugs. He would know some of their chemical makeups. And Shane and I were just talking about this. You know, I feel that he died because of something in those drugs that he wasn't expecting.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was, fentanyl or something, because he knew how much he could take.
Yes.
He was experienced addict, and he was smart, and so I really think that his death was an accident, and I don't think he was banking on getting a bad dose of drugs.
Yeah, nope, nobody does. It's interesting what's out there now. I mean, sometimes like these end packs, these light blue pressed pills that have so much fentanyl in it, and there's no regulation. They're counterfeit pills. You think you know what you're taking, and you have no idea. And so there's a lot of overdose deaths. Even on people that consider themselves very savvy and very knowledgeable, they get fooled, and all it takes is once. So Kyle, he would have made an incredible counselor. He would have been an incredible motivator. Now maybe you have to speak through you. Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah. I don't know. With Kyle, I think that some of the talks that he had with his dad, that his dad shared with me, was that he at first had this misconception, and I think a lot of people do too, that addicts have a certain look to them. And I think he learned in the end, towards the very end also too, because he was going to AA meetings and things like that. So he was seeing what most people think an addict looks like. Yes. And he was thinking up to a certain point, that's not me.
Yes.
I'm not that bad.
Yep, I'm not doing heroin, or I'm not doing...
Right. And so Shane educated him really quick. He said, you are one bad decision away from being that person. Yeah. You are only one step away from having lost your job, your family, and being homeless.
And you think through superhuman means you can pull it all off, but there's no such thing as a functioning addict. They think they are for a while.
Well, we thought, it was funny because a lot of people didn't know he had this addiction, because he did, even though he wasn't functioning, obviously, he made it look like he was.
Oh, yeah.
He's kept his job. He made plenty of money. He looked good. He was smart. He was funny. He seemed to, he lit up a room, and my son was like the jokester, and he was the party starter. And, we would be in the grocery store, and he would spontaneously start a dance party in the middle of the grocery store.
I know another guy like that.
So that's just how he operated, and he touched so many people's lives. Like he had so many friends that were like, Kyle was the best dude ever. Like he would get the shirt off his back for me, and he was always there for me, and he was so friendly. And so a lot of people didn't know he had this secret, this addiction that he struggled with, and it tormented him. And I wonder sometimes too if trying to keep up that facade of happiness and funness was difficult for him. Yeah. If that contributed also to his needing to self-medicate and things. But anyways, he I can't remember where I was going with this, but I feel like with Kyle, he learned that this is in your backyard. He learned that addiction doesn't really have a book cover. It comes in all forms. It's my neighbor who lives behind me who makes $300,000 a year could have an addiction. It's this young man who works for Texas Roadhouse that's 28 years old and seems like he's the life of the party. He has an addiction. Yeah. So
everybody thought everything came so easy to him. Yeah.
And even the other day, my husband, this was just last week actually, my husband pulled a 75-year-old male out of a bathtub that had overdosed on heroin that was laced with fentanyl.
Right.
And so it's your grandpa. It can be your grandpa too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I see it all the time. And I will tell you, I've been to a lot of funerals. You know, I work hospice and have been in the drug addiction world for 20-some years. I've never seen a more powerful one than that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. We, Shane and I, we wanted it to reflect him, but we also really wanted to reach people.
Yeah.
And so we talked about the addiction at our funeral. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about how people die when during the funerals. They want to preserve some dignity.
Yeah.
And that was important to us too. But for the most part, I think that honoring Kyle meant making sure that people understood that he did have an addiction and it tormented him. And there are ways to get out of that.
Well, and you're going to have to explain your funeral because I won't be able to.
Okay.
So you'll have to help me through and help the doctor through it, please. This is a huge church. It is packed standing room only, which speaks to Kyle's charm and popularity, and he was very vivacious and gregarious, and it was open casket, and like you said, there were all kinds of people that worked with him there.
Yeah.
And in fact, and even the minister said, I've never seen a funeral like this in my entire life. But, and so you're going to have to say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we closed the casket before we did this, but we brought Kyle into the sanctuary or the worship center ourselves. So Shane and I and his siblings and his grandparents, we brought him in. And that was important to us because he's our kid. Right. So Kyle works at Texas Roadhouse. You're going to make me cry, so I'm trying not to look at you.
I can't even do it, so yeah. Your strength is amazing. I know it's, but yeah.
So Kyle worked at Texas Roadhouse for many years, both locations. He was a trainer there, and I think the embodiment of what Texas Roadhouse is about, which is having a really good time.
Right. Yeah.
And customer service.
Yep.
Great food. Great fun atmosphere. He rocked that. And so we had asked, at first I didn't think we were going to be able to pull this off because a lot of people they didn't think they could do it.
Right.
Because it was hard for everybody. But we had asked if Texas Roadhouse would line dance for Kyle as we brought him in. So it was so cool. Just thinking about it was awesome. We finally got enough kids willing to do it. I say kids because I'm, those are my kids' ages.
No, absolutely. They were all his friends or colleagues,
that he worked with.
And they needed to see this.
Yes, yeah. So they lined up at the front of the worship center, and we brought Kyle into the boot
and booty farewell line dance.
It was awesome.
It was amazing. Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So that was unique.
Yeah.
And then
there wasn't a dry eye there. I'll tell you that.
No, there wasn't. Yeah. And then we, Shane and I took turns, talking. At first, I wasn't going to talk because I didn't think I could. But I was compelled that morning, that morning, to speak. And then we took turns, and then his brother, Taryn, spoke. And then Kyle's dad, he is an addict in recovery. And his way of recovering was through being born again. And so it was really, and I'm active in my church and a Christian as well, and so it was really, really super important for us to make sure that not only did we talk about the addiction and getting help, but we also wanted to share the gospel as well. So we did that.
Right.
to the point where I feel like, I didn't think that the pastor could elaborate much because we had already done a lot of preaching, but his message was amazing. We didn't really know what he was going to be talking about, but it was perfect. It just ended up being perfect. So
it was good, but the two parents up there, powerful.
Was it?
Oh yeah, because it's every parent's worst
It's your nightmare.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
And you were probably waiting for that phone call one day,
Yep.
or knowing that could always happen, and then one day you got it.
Yep.
You got it. So.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you telling this story so much because people need to hear it.
Yeah.
You will no doubt save some lives. You will no doubt make a difference. You and Kyle both. And it took a lot of courage on your part.
Yeah.
And
it's
amazed,
hard. Every day, it's just, Shane and I were just talking about this yesterday. Yeah. It's, there are waves. There's days that we feel like, hey, today was a good day. And there's other days that grief tsunami hits you.
Right.
Because Kyle's only been gone for a little over 90 days. So it was November 12th of 19. Yeah. So, but for me, I think for me, I want to be able to help people through this. Yes. And I want to help people. I don't really know how to help addicts because I did the best I could to help Kyle, and we still failed. But I think that as a parent, I could maybe help other parents prepare for this or deal with it when it happens.
Right.
And so I don't know how much time we have, but there were some things that I wanted to share, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's not me.
Share away.
Okay.
Share away.
All right. I wrote some notes just so I wouldn't ramble.
And thank you for helping me through this.
Because I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I do ramble from time to time. Okay. So what I would say to other parents of addicts, and this is stuff that I've learned from making mistakes and just the experience that I've had of being a parent of an addict for the last 10 years. So one of the first things I want people to know is they should educate themselves, because I think in this whole process, what has helped us as parents and his family members, it's his grandparents, his siblings, is we learned about the addiction. We learned about the drugs, how they were taken, signs of symptoms of the use, and just because they're sneaky, sometimes you don't even know what's going on in your own home because you're living, so, you're not focused in on it. How the drugs affect their behavior and their brain, because it's so easy to say, well, why can't you just quit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it helps you understand why they can't just quit. And when they do quit, what's going on? Because it's not like a switch that can just, once you're done, you don't have...
No, that's the part of medication-assisted treatment.
Yeah. So, also, another thing that we learned was what happens in the recovery stage, as far as your brain learning how to rewire itself and not...
You get dependent on all these dopamine surges, and all of a sudden it's not there.
That's so important to learn that process. Yes. Also, another thing that helped us was learning about Kyle's other mood disorders, the reason why he started using, because if you don't deal with that, it's like a never-ending cycle. So, and then also inform yourself on recovery programs. Be ready to help in a crisis. Right. Because that was one of the things when he finally did call and say, "Mom, I want to go." I had to do all that research that day, and I wished I had already had that in my back pocket. I know that stuff changes all the time, so you probably have to keep up on the resources. But I had gone to a National Alliance of Mental Illness course. It's called NAMI. Have you heard of it?
Right, yes.
Okay. I went to a 10-week, it was like a college course almost, and they met once a week on a Tuesday. For a couple of hours, and I learned about the mood disorders, how people, we talked a little bit about addiction too, and the resources, like where do you go when you need help? Right. So I had some of that in my back pocket, but as far as like the inpatient recoveries, I didn't know. So that was the stuff I wished I had already had in my back pocket. Create boundaries. That's another thing I have. You've got to keep your other family safe. Don't enable it because I do know that I've heard stories of parents providing
monies.
Like some lady even told me one time that she had provided like sterile syringes for her son who was injecting heroin, and I don't get that. So
you don't know what to do, but they do crazy things sometimes.
Yeah, so don't enable if you can prevent it. I mean, try to be aware of what you're enabling to, because sometimes even if you're thinking you're giving them money to help them with a bill.
Yeah. It's not where it goes.
No.
Absolutely.
Also, don't on the flip side of that, don't disown your addict. Because I feel like that, I mean, you can create boundaries without disowning your addict. Right. They still need a lifeline.
Yes.
And sometimes that's just to talk. I mean, sometimes it's not like they don't even know what they need. They just need to talk to somebody. And so that's one thing that Kyle had always. He always had a lifeline, like somebody who could call and just talk to. And so I want parents to know that they should. I know the behavior is awful. You can create boundaries without totally disowning and miscommunicating your child. So, and if you can allow it, I mean, if you're able to, don't let them estrange themselves from you either, because it's embarrassing. Yeah, addiction is embarrassing to them, and sometimes Kyle would like drop off the face of the earth, and I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, and I know it was because he was using. Yeah. But I kept bugging him. Yeah. Like, you know.
And maybe too proud or too. Yes. I got macho. Right. Yeah.
Or even sometimes when he was in recovery, he would do that because it was just hard. Yeah. You know,
a lot of soul searching.
Right. And he was vulnerable and, fragile when he was in recovery. And
Can't admit to that.
Yeah. So, also parents do housekeeping. And what I mean by that is you need to deal with your own issues. Because your addict child, they need you. So if you have an addiction, which I think most Americans do of some kind, even if it's just the television or work, or in a bad marriage or unhealthy relationship or whatever, you need to deal with that because they feed off of that instability. So it's really important for you to be a healthy person so that you can be there for your addict. Because they're not going to lean on you if you're just as crazy as they are, like in such a crisis
even if
mode.
they're making progress, and then they go back into a stressful environment.
Absolutely. That's so important. Right. And then I know this sounds dumb, but prepare yourself for the worst. Yes. So you need to know that your child can die from this and be prepared for it. You don't ever want to think about preparing for your own child's death. I mean, people prepare for their parents dying, but they don't think about preparing for their children. Right. I mean...
And you had siblings or his siblings to worry about as well.
Yes. So prepare for the worst. Yeah. Financially and mentally. Prepare yourself for this because having to, bury your child, it is a very stressful time, and if you're already somewhat prepared for it, it makes it so much easier. Yeah. And I know you don't want to think about it and put that out in the universe that could happen, but it can.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm living proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought I'd be talking about my son's death.
No one does.
And then just to finish up, I'll try and hurry because I know you guys
No.
have other things to do. So what would I say to parents who have lost a son or daughter to an overdose? Because this is the life I'm living now. Mm-hmm. Find some faith. Jesus, whatever your faith system is, get there. Because I couldn't do this if I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I know this is on public wherever, and I probably shouldn't be talking about religion, so I won't spend a lot of time.
No, I think you're amazing. I think you're amazing. It is.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have my faith, and I don't see how people do it without it. I just don't. And then all the things I just mentioned about what to say to parents of addicts, do that too. Mm-hmm. If you haven't educated yourself about all this stuff, it's not too late.
Yeah.
Because that helps you process what happened and deal with the finality of it and maybe understand what they were going through. And so, do all those things that I just mentioned.
Including speaking out so that you can save
others. Speaking out so that you can save others. Do your housekeeping. Get yourself together. If you have an addiction, in their honor, do it. Deal with it. Mm-hmm. Unpack the guilt.
Yes.
Okay? And I say that because I don't care how great of a parent you are, there's always something you feel like you could have done.
Absolutely.
Different.
Yeah.
That would have made a difference. Shane and I still talk about that today. Like, what could we, what other thing could we have done? I think the thing that is hardest for us is that, we created boundaries and we stuck to them.
Yes.
What would have happened if we hadn't stuck to him? Would he be okay still? Yeah. I don't know. We don't know. Yeah. And another thing is my son, he died alone in his bedroom. And that just kills me because he had so many people he could have called. Right. And I had just text messaged him too. And I was like, I love you. So he knew we were there. He just, I don't know. It's just, that's the thing that gets me is that, he just...
But he knew you loved him. He always...
Yeah. So unpack that guilt. Mm-hmm. Go to a counselor, deal with it, find a friend that you can just be raw with, because that's what I did, and I got a support group. I don't do very well with these sappy support groups where the moms just cry about the loss of their children. I have very strong Christian friends that are my rock, and that's my support group. Mm-hmm. And then I have a friend, you know her, Judy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's my raw person. Mm-hmm. I can just
She's seen it. And,
So if get one person, you can you can say whatever's on your mind, because there's been days that I'm just so angry, just at the whole situation. Right. Because he was such a good kid.
Yes.
He didn't steal. He had a heart of gold. And I'm just, there's just days I'm still mad. Yeah. So if you can get that out, find somebody you can get that out with. And then celebrate your son or daughter. That helps me with my grief and this process. Instead of like tears of sadness and, my life is not going to be the same, I know, with him gone. We do cry. Mm-hmm. We try to keep it to tears of joy and bittersweet and things like that. But what we do is we have identified his legacy, which is, he just was such a loving person, and yes. And so we try to celebrate him and honor him and paying forward love. And we have spontaneous dance parties in the grocery store and fun Fridays. That's my new thing. We do, I just jam out to fun music and just do goofy things on Fridays. And so that's one of the things that we do. And then this is so important. Don't stop living.
Yes.
Because your son or daughter would not want that.
That's right. I see parents or family members that just can't move on. They're stuck in the.
It's hard too. I understand that because grief is it's like this veil or this fog, and it's heavy, and it's just I could see how easy it is to get caught up in that. But the thing that keeps me from, I feel it, and it has changed me. I will say that. I mean, it's affected my work. It's affected, how I react to things, and I'm not as resilient to stress right now. And it's just, it will affect you. I mean, you guys you see this smiley Tina, but on the inside, it's a struggle sometimes to be that way. But Kyle would not want me to stop living.
Right.
He wouldn't want that. And I keep that in mind. And then also, too, what about the other people in your life?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I see people who have other children, and they're so riddled with grief that they are not experiencing life with their children. Their other children that are living. Yeah. So, just don't stop living because it's not honoring. It's not. And then focus on good memories, too.
Absolutely.
Instead of the absence, focus on,
And there were a lot of good ones. There were a lot of good memories.
I'm almost done here. So don't spend too much time trying to identify the why, because it's one of the things that I've had to struggle with. Because you can seriously go into rabbit holes that never end.
Right.
Why did this happen? What could I have done differently? Try not to spend a whole lot of time there, because in the end, it's not going to bring him back. So I think that it can lead to depression, anxiety, guilt. So you want to think about things so life isn't repeated, history isn't repeated, but you also don't need to spend a whole lot of time there because it's not going to change anything. And then this last point I wanted to make to parents who have lost their son or daughter to an overdose is that that acceptance piece. I think that's the last level of grief, is just to accept that your life isn't going to be any different. I mean, it is going to be different. It's not going to be the same, is what I meant to say. And that it changes you.
Right.
This changes you. And there's going to be some things that are temporary changes while you're dealing. I hear the first year of grief is like the worst. But I think some things are permanent as well. Mm-hmm. And I think you just have to get to the point where you're okay with that. Your life is going to look different. It's never going to be the same. Why fight it? I mean...
Right. You cannot change it.
Get yourself through the things that are temporary, but the things that are permanent... this is just, to lose a son or daughter, it's probably one of the worst things I could think of could happen to you while you're living. Right. In life.
And I think parents live with that fear.
Yeah.
Often, whether they're just learning how to drive or, they're at camp or heaven forbid, if they develop an addiction to something. And one of the things that really resonates with me too, although the addiction seems like the headline, that's the underlying mood disorder is really the story. And
it's huge.
And so often, especially males, are not even tuned into their own feelings, or people don't really think about treating the mood disorder as well. And so you can do really well and then fly off the tracks and do really well. And, like with, Kyle, he would get better and then worse and better and then worse. And so. Yeah.
And I think, and this is just what I've seen with my experience with addicts that have recovered, because I know a few, that the ones who are super successful, whatever they choose to do in their recovery process, whether it be getting into religion or, support groups, or they have to almost hyper focus on that one thing. Mm-hmm. It's almost like putting these blinders on to anything outside in the world and just staying focused on that one thing that's that anchor that's going to keep them on their path. I know with Shane, he was, it was kind of like you would go from somebody who didn't go to church at all to he was there all the time. So I think that was a huge thing. Is just keep focused on that. Keep focusing on that one thing that's going to help you, or several things. I guess it could be several that can get you, and don't
get distracted.
Get distracted. No, because that's what happened to Kyle. I think he would get distracted by life.
Oh yeah.
One time he called me and he said, "Mom, I think maybe I need to move out of state." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because he was living with Jamie at the time, and he was like, "I know where all the dealers live."
Yes.
It's like and I see them all the time, and he was like, it's just so hard. Yeah. And he, because he had expressed I just need to go somewhere where I don't know where all the dealers live.
No.
I mean.
Sometimes I've had people finally succeed just only by completely a new setting.
Yes.
And sometimes, of course, it won't be any better where they move to, but sometimes, like you said,
just something different, or the change in the behavior, or
you're going to have weak moments.
Yes, So I don't know. I like I said, we feel like Kyle had all these resources, and we still are where we are today. So I don't know that there's a particular secret sauce, but I know places like this, that's a start for sure.
Right.
I mean, try not to do this on your own too. That would be my advice to an addict. Don't try to do it by yourself.
Yeah, people think that they're the only one with this dirty little secret, or that nobody else understands, and there's a whole lot of people out there. But I appreciate you coming and telling your stories so much, and thank you for helping me through some tough times. And no, it's not only takes a lot of courage, but I mean, you're going to help some people. I have no doubt.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I do not want any other parent to ever walk down this path, but there will be.
Yes.
I know. So if I can help someone who's been there, who is there, or could potentially be there.
Yes.
That's what I want to do. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tina.
You're welcome.
All right.
Dr. Lakin is a board-certified family medicine doctor with an emphasis in addiction medicine and over 25 years of experience. For addiction recovery services in the Wichita area, please visit www.centerforchangeks.com or visit samhsa.gov for a national directory of resources and recovery centers in your area. You can also find these links in the podcast description. Thank you for listening to the Lakin Chronicles Road to Recovery podcast. And remember, you've got this.